I brought up Costco, and you were telling me, "Hey, buy no Costco." Costco just switched from Pepsi to Coke, baby.
He's not buying Costco. It's at like 50 times sales,
Tell
Douglas.
me,
It's the
tell me,
most ridiculous.
tell me
He's not
any
buying
other
Costco.
reason. Tell me any other reason why they switched from Pepsi to Coke.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
If you could have any title in the world, what title would that be?
A nice guy, good dad. What are we talking about here?
That's your title?
I mean,
Like that's on a business card?
Get your joke over with already.
No, I would love that on your business card because I know I could see a sucker. I could spot it from a mile away. If you have a nice guy on your business card, whew, oh my goodness. Come
Not
on, buy
value
this used
investor.
car.
That if it said value investor, I'm not getting any business.
Absolutely not. I thought you were going to say plumber of freedom.
Elaborate.
I don't know if you took a gander at the piece. We're not talking, this is not on the big content to talk about today, but there was this piece in the Wall Street Journal that was about Milei. I think that's how you pronounce the Argentinian president's
Yeah.
name, and all the policies that have been into place. And the person that is running his deregulation situation called himself the plumber of freedom.
There's some pretty exciting stuff that's happening in Argentina right now.
It is, it's cutting edge. Let me call it that. It is cutting edge, and Trump is taking notice.
Well, okay, so like you said, we won't go into detail about it, but what's so fascinating is a lot of times on the show we throw a little shade at the academics and say, yeah, that's what the textbook says, but in real life, this is actually how it has happened. And a lot of what he's done is like, oh, just read the textbook on economics and watch what happens when supply can freely meet demand and there's not all this garbage in the middle. And it's worked better than he even promised.
Well, it depends on who you ask, because people still aren't employed. So it's working from the perspective, I think, of what you just said, from like a currency valuation perspective and the macro, from the macro lens.
I didn't follow his campaign promises closely, but I always understood his promises from afar to be inflation first and foremost, because inflation was so crazy.
Oh, yeah.
It was like 100+% 1 month, 24 months ago, right? It was so crazy that employment almost can't happen. Buying groceries almost can't happen. So
Yeah.
you got to tackle that first. I think let's talk in 2-3 years about what employment looks like.
Yeah, I think that's the point. I was just wondering if you were going to say plumber of freedom, because what a title.
I mean, I like some freedom. I'll take some freedom up in here, but no, that does not.
No, you're going to go nice guy. That's fine.
I really messed that one up. I'm never
Oh.
gonna live that one down.
No, for never ever. How are you doing on this fine week?
Great. How about you?
Pretty decent. Got a couple things I'm interested in talking about today, so it should be fun. It should be lots of fun. And going back international is one of them. Are you cool if I step in first?
Yeah, go for it.
Reach into that good old fishbowl, a country that we have talked about almost never, China, today. Don't you should have seen. Have you ever seen someone's eyes roll so aggressively their whole head comes off their neck? That is what I
Yeah.
just witnessed right here with Mr.
I
Skippy.
didn't think this was gonna be your first topic, Douglas. I mean,
Why not?
go for it. Yeah,
Why not?
let's get into it.
So China, US, aggressively button heads. On the next episode is AI. They've been hitting AI for a hot minute here, but what's happened is there was this assumption made by the US, made by Americans, that we were so far ahead, years ahead of where China was with AI. We got this, you know what I'm saying? Brush them shoulders off. But nay, says the Chinese. There's an organization called DeepSeek. There are others like it, I'm sure. However, DeepSeek seems to be in the lead here. And what happened was, because of US controls, they could not get the hottest, latest, greatest chips from our good friends over in NVIDIA. So they had to get creative.
Okay, yes and no. I'm just gonna fact check along the way. There's lots of ways to get around these. Okay.
Hold on.
Lots of ways.
I would love for I would love for you to walk through A through D of your ways of smuggling NVIDIA chips into
Oh,
China.
I've been buying the
Go.
chips and then I just send it to Uncle Vinny who sends it. Yeah, no, I I don't believe these are completely ironclad, first and foremost. But DeepSeek's research paper claims that they train their model, and fine, I'm not disputing this specific point. I'm just not saying let's pretend it's not possible to get the latest chips. But they're basically using a previous version of the NVIDIA chip, which is much less powerful, Moore's law, everything else. Doogles, get to the end already, which is their latest model performs very, very well. And they spent millions of dollars rather than tens of billions of dollars to train it, or at least that's what they claim.
I'm talking Arnold Palmer. You know why I'm talking Arnold Palmer? Because this performance is on par with American performance,
I thought we
or
were
at least
mixing tea
very
and lemonade over here, but
yeah, a little
keep
little
going.
bit, but or very close to. So when you look at the models that have been regaled over here, you look at what's happening over with the other open source, because DeepSeek is open source, other open source over with Meta. It's saying, oh, pretty much on par. You look at what OpenAI is doing. Maybe not so much with the O1 situation, not as close there. But if you look at GPT-4, basically on par there. And with the numbers that were thrown around in this video that I watched, I'm going to estimate this a bit. It seems like the price that American companies paid was something like 1,000 times what it seems like the Chinese company
Yeah.
paid. And they're able to pass those cost savings along. And so it's something like 10x the cost to 30x the cost, it seems, to run the models in the US versus what it is in China. Because I'm going to step back because you didn't let me finish before. Because whether Uncle Vinny has the chips or not, it doesn't matter. Because of the efficiency gains that they've gotten because of innovation they had to have for not having the latest chips, those efficiency gains is what leads to this cost situation.
Yes. Can we take a slight detour and talk about your boy Roger Bannister?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Love talking about Roger Bannister. Didn't he
Right.
settle Virginia back in the 1600s?
No, isn't he the guy what are you talking about? When the human psyche could not break through and run a mile in under 4 minutes, like this is something that had never been done in the history of the
Yep.
world.
That's right. That's right.
Then your boy Roger busts it, and I forget the exact numbers. I was trying to pull it up on the side, but then like the very next year, 10 people run sub 4. It was this emotional barrier. The foundation had to be laid, and then once people watched a human accomplish that, they were like, "Oh, I can do it.
It's possible.
Oh, I'll talk
It's
to him
possible.
about his training. I'll talk to him about his nutrition, whatever." It's a very odd reference, but it's odd for a reason. When a foundation has already been built, whether that's building semiconductors or complex autos, whatever the case may be, it's so much easier to go look at that fundamental foundation, the
Oh,
first
yeah.
castle that's built, and be like, oh, I watched them build a castle. I'm
Mhm.
going to learn from their techniques and I'm going to rebuild it. The thing you have to mention here is that if you ask DeepSeek how it was trained, it will often tell you it's ChatGPT.
Yep.
So someone like OpenAI did all the heavy lifting and spent billions of dollars of capex. And now these much smaller, more efficient models, maybe even with worse chips, can train on top of that foundation. It's an entirely different ball game.
And by the way, spending billions of dollars in order to create something that other people can use freely is what nonprofits do.
This is where I mean, I'll let you continue your narrative here, but this is what I want to talk about. I've been telling you the capex is crazy. Just earlier this week, right? Trump came out with the AI initiative, and Musk throws shade on. Do we have to do a blow by blow here? Musk throws shade on. Is it called Project Stargate? That
Yeah.
says they don't have the money, and then Satya, the CEO of Microsoft, says, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm good for my $80 billion. All we've been talking about in Silicon Valley with venture capitalists and with these huge tech companies is, oh, how much capex I'm going to have to spend to get the incremental gains in AI. To do the next breakthrough, that capex might still look the same, but to do, yeah, go.
I'm gonna pause you right there because you said a very important word, I believe, to this narrative: incremental. The amount of capex that's being spent on AI in my mind, makes so much sense for you to have a moat or to leapfrog competition in certain areas. Like if you can come out and say, we got this AI model. Oh no, don't do you none, son. We can use it. You can't. Spending tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, like, can make sense. But when you're getting incremental gains, I think it's quite questionable. If I look, I did a real quick look, so these numbers could be wrong, but hopefully they're at least directionally correct. Zuckerberg came out and said they're planning to spend $65 billion next year on AI-ish.
Yep, that's right.
They have something like $70 billion on their balance sheet, and they produce something like $70 billion a year in free cash flow. Something like that. When I think about, and I'm taking one company which has its own specifics and they could use that in a variety of ways. So this is overly simplification, but just the concept of it is if they're effectively spending their entire current cash balance on incremental, there's a big question mark years down the road.
This is going to turn into like a 4-hour acquired episode because there's so much to talk about here.
Okay.
So
don't even with that. You wash your mouth with soap.
But what Meta is doing, Meta's spending that money. Meta's model is open source. Meta's spending that money to steal the profit engine from Google and Microsoft and all these and Salesforce and all these other competitors. They're saying, I don't want them to be able to go spend $50 billion and narrowly define it, not share that broadly, and say we are the only ones that can offer this insight. So you have a true moat. Meta's saying, no, I have money to spend, and I will make it sure that you have no moat, so people continue to use my products because I generate revenue in an entirely different way. DeepSeek's model is also open source, but again, DeepSeek's model is built on a foundation of ridiculous capex spend. It seems very, very likely that it was pretty much entirely trained on OpenAI's ChatGPT. They could have used other models too. They might have used Lambda. They might have. I mean, I don't know the exact specifics there. So yes, is it a big deal that it seems like the first players in the space spent 1,000 times more to get the same insights as the players in the space that came in 24 months later? I think that's a huge deal. And that has other ramifications. But the Meta CapEx spend, I understand why it's relevant to the conversation, but it's also, there's so many other complexities there.
I know there are so many. That's why I said it's an oversimplification. And it's not this. I used Meta's numbers just because I came across them. It's not necessarily about Meta, but just it's the concept of how much they are willing to spend. And that's it's such a big bet for potential incremental.
Yeah, very true.
But if they end up where the bet is where they end up where you said, whoever it is, Meta, whomever, the bet is that they end up in a place where they have the insights that no one else can use, or they take away someone else's.
Okay, so sorry, for this example, we can talk about anyone with Meta. Let's say Microsoft, and let's say 80 billion in capex spend.
Yep.
Microsoft wants to have proprietary insights that they can sell to their clients that generate significant revenue for them. And if you spend 80 billion, you certainly want to make at least 80 billion back, and hopefully 10 times that. I think where the VC community is freaking out with DeepSeek is, oh my goodness, I wrote all these checks for people to go spend numbers like 80 billion, and I should have been writing checks for people to go spend $5 million.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I didn't write any of those checks because I've been ranting on the podcast that this CapEx spend didn't make any sense, and that the tech companies were not nearly as good of business models. When you have that CapEx spending, it's an oil company at that point.
Yep. Agreed. I fully praise thee for what you've been talking about there. And there was a title, I was just looking at what episode number it is, episode 180 of this podcast. The title of our podcast, I think, is what we're talking about right now. My AI juice is worth your squeeze. I think that's what we're talking about. There are these companies that are spending tens and tens of billion dollars a year, and then because AI in general, versions of AI that we're talking about now in general, are going to be the infrastructure for the future, like general infrastructure.
Sure.
So thank you for spending your $80 billion, because now I can go spend $5 million and get the juice.
This is the thing I don't fully understand about the technology and coding, but if I was an exec at OpenAI right now, I think I'd be yelling at someone like, how did we allow DeepSeek to take our $80 billion of CapEx spending and just train their model a lot? I don't understand how it's that much of an open book. And it seems to me like it shouldn't be, even with API calls. But I'll just plead ignorance on that one. That is baffling to me because it's truly, you did not protect your moat.
And with that, what's next in your fishbowl?
That's it. That's all you want to talk about with DeepSeek?
Yeah, we got the concepts across. But my big
Okay.
concept was spend a whole bunch of money, other people take advantage of it.
And that's exactly what's happening today. I want to talk about the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia.
Oh,
Q3
hold on.
insights.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I do, there is something else I had. There was one point that was brought up in this video that made me do a little head shake.
Okay.
So Kai Fu Lee, people may know him. He ran Google in China for a hot minute. Very well-known individual, internationally at least. He's got this company, 01.ai. And so they had him on the video talking about advancements, DeepSeek, et cetera. And then they say his company is 8 months old, I believe they said, and is already a unicorn, which means it's worth $1 billion or more. $1 billion valuation. And then the tone of what I'm about to say sounded very impressed. They're like, and his company already has nearly $14 million in revenue. And then they went out. When I was watching this video, I did that go back 10 seconds at least 4 times. And I was like, did I hear that right? Was that $114 million in revenue, which would still be like a pretty decent multiple, but not wild. $14 million, nearly $14 million in revenue. I'm guessing they're rounding up from 6 to 14, nearly $14 million in revenue and $1 billion valuation. That's the multiple bet that's being taken in the private markets when you have something like they have over there. That was the last stat, and then you can go on to your Fed Reserve.
It's bonkers. And that's how the space is right now. And that's another reason why everyone that has written checks is so concerned at the moment, because it's honestly as if all the world wanted flat screen TVs, and you were told that flat screen TVs cost $100, and you were also sold this bill of goods that life only exists if you have a flat screen TV in your house. And then you saw the same flat screen TV for $2, 99 cents, and you went, huh? And you like go up to the thing and go, it's got to be cheap, or there's got to be some issue with it. And the more you look at it, I mean, this news is kind of a week or two old now, but the more people look at it, the more people go, I think this is actually a quality flat screen TV.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Philadelphia Federal Reserve. We're a little stale here. We're talking Q3 2024 insights. There's one chart that I want to talk about. It is the share of active accounts making minimum payments on their credit cards. Now, you know me, I like a good rant. My latest rant is that all people for all charts should show at least 5 decades worth of data. I hate everyone right now. They zoom in all the time and they go, oh, this is the greatest that's happened in the last 6 months. And I go, I don't care. That's completely worthless. They did okay. They went back to 2012, but I want them to go back to 1950. All right.
I'm going to take this to heart. Any chart in the future I ever make has to show at least 5 decades worth of data.
It can be like podcast revenue, and the podcast has only been around 4 years, and I want it to go back to 1950 at least. Okay?
Yes, minimum. Okay, love it.
Minimum. Okay, so since 2012, again, I wish the chart went back longer, we are at a peak here. So again, the share of active credit card accounts making the minimum payment. I'd struggle even putting a ballpark on this. It is currently almost 11%. 11% of credit card accounts. This is not necessarily 11% of people, because a lot of people have multiple credit card accounts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say each person has 2 credit cards on average. Maybe this is only 5 or 6% of people. But the APY on these things, Doogles, it's like 20 to 30% right now. Anyone making a minimum payment is the very definition of struggling, I would say.
And although it's not 5 decades, the historical comparison I do think is good, if for nothing else, to refute one point. Because oftentimes I feel like in the last couple years, folks are talking about how good the American consumer has it, except during election time. It was like American consumers doing great. American consumers doing great. Election time, it went, everything's terrible. But anyway, except during election time, we've been talking about how good the American consumer has it. Yes, there's more debt. However, they're also wealthier, right? Things like that were always put into
Yep.
perspective. But then when you start going back even the 12 years that this steps back to compare it to, you go, ooh, okay, maybe not. And at least at a minimum, I think the historical nature of it is good to refute that one point.
Well, and what you said is true though. Well, there's nuance there. I don't want to say it's entirely true. There are people in this country who have never been in better shape financially.
Oh yeah.
And not just a few, probably a decent amount. But let's not act like that's everyone, because it's just not true. I don't know that I have anything else to say here other than that point strikes me. The charts we've talked about in the past are like total outstanding balance
Yeah.
of credit card
Yeah.
debt. And I've always been
That's
like,
right.
I don't really care. GDP's up, earnings are up. Like, don't look at it that way. This chart to me tells a story that's a little more powerful than that.
I'll give you that. I think the relatives, the percentages, relatives, ratios, things like that are always decently helpful. And I also so that's one point. And I also say that if interest rates are at a point that people aren't used to over the last 15 years, independent of
Mhm.
whether they're historically normal or not used to, and balances continue to go up, like something is not comfortable in that situation.
The other thing that two more points. Okay. First is if our congressional leaders want to get involved in something that doesn't allow free markets, you know how much of a free market guy I am. The
Hmm.
thing to consider is either making it harder for people to get credit cards. I know there's pros and cons to that, or potentially looking at what I think is predatory lending that happens in the space. If someone is paying 30% interest on this, in my eyes, that's not really different than a payday loan, which everyone considers to be predatory lending. This has real impact on people. And what shocked me in the past 12 months is the fact that the credit card companies, almost all cards are variable rates, and they raised average rates from like the high teens into the mid 20s when the Fed funds rate is still around 4%. They raised rates
Yeah.
in a way that seems predatory. It does not seem like their cost of borrowing increased by an equal percentage.
Yes. And I wonder, it's you're probably right with the predatory nature of it because companies going to be companies and they're trying to make profit. I also think about this, and you're most likely more right than what I'm about to say, but I think about this in relation to where the long-term treasury also is, where Fed rate started to come down, treasury, long-term treasury rates went up.
True.
And I think from that standpoint, the take from that perspective is interest rates really shouldn't be coming down right now. I think is that take. It's a bet that they're going to have to, at least over the longer term. And this long term here is 10 years, going to have to go up. And so I wonder if it's some of that also in the private market. It may just be predatory, but it might also be a bet that the down cycle is a more temporary cycle. I don't know. Just raising it.
Very fair. And like, I mean, I'm about the biggest free market capitalist there is. What if rational actors were on all sides? The people that relied on this credit when they saw the rates go up, they'd change their habits in a way that said, oh, effectively, my credit card company is saying my personal credit rating has been deteriorated. And therefore,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need
Yeah. Yeah.
to change my behavior. I just don't know that that always happens.
Yeah.
I wish it did.
All right. I'm going to reach in the fishbowl to talk about someone that's come up over the last year for a few different reasons. But this piece, I thought, dove into one of those reasons in a way that I took up as quite insightful and worth discussing.
Mm-hmm.
This is David Einhorn, who runs Greenlight Capital. There's a Financial Times piece called The Lamentation of David Einhorn. Let's lament with this man.
So happy to lament with him.
Yeah, let's just lament away.
I have the same lamentations, if that's a word.
Yeah, I was like, is it because I say lament, but then I said lamentation. I don't know. Lamentation. I don't know. The core point here that he comes back to, and the Financial Times piece is a recap of a talk that he gave, and so it goes back and forth between their takes and his quotes. Honestly, I was a bigger fan of his quotes and getting my own takes than I were of their takes on his quotes. So I'm gonna hit on a bunch of his quotes. What David Einhorn is saying is the markets are fundamentally broken. We covered this a few months ago too, when he was talking about, I'm just gonna buy companies that can buy themselves with their cash balance because that is unequivocally.
Yeah, because there's no price discovery out there. So
Yep.
yes, go ahead.
Oh no, you want to keep going? Go.
I'm worried I'm going to jump in and get
No,
on the
go.
Einhorn train too much. No, I want the high level overview first, Douglas.
Okay. So I'm gonna give a couple quotes from him. So one thing he says, it's passive flows and other people who are investing money mostly care about price, not value. Okay. What he's saying with this, when he says price, not value, he is saying that no longer are people looking at valuations in the professional market, the quote unquote professional market, looking at valuations and saying, and he goes into this a little bit more and saying, even for non-value stocks, like growth stocks, just being able to say, I can look at the fundamentals of this organization and I believe its price will go up 50%, whether that's deep value, value, or growth. That's not happening. They're looking at price and betting that the price is going to go up. And not like in 3 years, the price will be higher, but on Friday, the price will be higher. So the combination of that in the quote unquote active market, and then the passive flows he's mentioning here is the continued rise of index funds. And one of the things he states, and I don't know personally that this is happening or not, I'll just take his words for it. But he's saying when people are trying to do what they used to do to make that valuation bet, they get fired. And the money they were previously investing then just goes into passive index funds. And the passive index funds are market cap weighted. And so they go back into the companies that are the big ones.
That are most expensive, that have been trending upwards on price only and not fundamentals.
Exactly. And there's this graph in there. I hadn't looked at it in this way before, but 'cause we talked about market concentration here. But there's a graph that looks at the number of S&P 500 stocks that account for half the index's value. So the lower this number, the more concentrated the market is, because it's looking at the number of stocks that it takes to make up half the value. Right now, this chart is saying we're at 26 stocks, which goes back to 1980. It's saying is
should
the
go back to
lowest.
1950, by the way.
It should, but maybe I just cut it off. I don't know. It goes back to 1980, and it's saying we're the lowest in that period that it's ever been is 26 stocks. And so his point is when you go back into the market cap weighted, you're going back into Nvidia, you're going back into Tesla, you're going back into Microsoft, etc. All right, I'll pause there to get your commentary and keep going.
And what's our quote from our friend, the CEO of Interactive Brokers? 70% of all trading volume is Mag 7, Magnificent
There you go.
7.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. The Einhorn haters will say, he's been saying this for 5 years, this is an excuse for his underperformance. Fine.
Sure.
I find all of his talks on this very compelling. Then the way he talks through this cascading effect of you bet on fundamentals, your performance sucks. So the board of whatever endowment you're managing says, oh, we should have been in passive. They save the money to pay on the investment research team, put it in passive. That makes the price of the Magnificent Seven go up. Then all your retail investors have been told by Buffett and others for 50 years, oh, just go passive. So they buy S&P 500. The FIRE movement buys S&P 500. Your retail traders are out there buying stuff like the Trump meme coin, Doogles. If there's any argument for people only caring about price and not fundamentals, it is, sorry, let me pull up a quote for you. On spot.dog, which is a new cryptocurrency exchange.
Hold on, where do you find these websites?
So we talked about pump.fun 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
That's how anyone can make a meme coin at any time. Spot.dog brands itself as the Robin Hood of meme coin trading. So it is an exchange for people to buy those coins as quickly as possible with like a PayPal account. This is how they describe cryptocurrency meme coins. Cryptocurrency meme coins are not assets and do not possess any intrinsic value and do not have utility. Meme coins are for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered an investment, currency, or something of value. They go out of their way to say, you should put money in this. You should buy the new Trump meme coin that went from 0 to $80 billion worth of value in 3 days. And it has no utility, no value, no anything else. A lot of money.
Yes.
A lot of money was spent on that. It's the perfect argument. So Einhorn and I were over here buying industrial companies at 6 times cash flow. No one cares. Absolutely no one cares. Because if you're in a gambling mood, there are a lot quicker ways to make money. And if you're in an investing mood and you don't actually want to read the 10K, which no one wants to do because that's actually hard work, you're supposed to invest in passive in the S&P. I think he nails this, but I'm ready for the haters to tell me I'm just excusing my performance away.
SkippyDoogles@gmail.com. Haters, send in the mail. We love it. Please do. SkippyDoogles@gmail.com. Another thing he states is, so they fired all the investment managers that are doing that. He also said, and these investment managers used to have analysts, and they had 5 or 6 analysts on their team, and their analysts were looking at every company and diving into the details, reading the 10Ks, looking at the ratios. They're fired too. And so it doesn't mean that people aren't following any companies, but they're certainly not following every company. And the importance of that, and when Adam Burrows was on the show with Josh Scott a few months ago, he mentioned a version of this too, is the importance of that is that there's less coverage and less volume for the non-mega cap stocks.
Yes.
And so if you are the stock that's worth $1 billion or less in market cap, you don't have an analyst telling anybody to buy. Therefore, you don't have any volume with people buying. Most likely, as long as you're running a fundamentally sound business that is growing, producing cash, your fundamentals are getting better and better. And to quote Skippy from a minute ago, nobody cares. And this is the point that Einhorn, going back to what I said at the beginning, this is the point he's making when he says markets are fundamentally broken. And I love, I'm going to say one more thing, I'll pass it over. I love this. He says, and this creates what I call a very, very stable disequilibrium.
So this is where I wish I was Greenlight instead of me. Greenlight assets under management looks like it's 1.4 billion. That's actually a little stale, but 26 employees. Okay. I get so excited. Well, I wish I had 1.4 billion. And I also wish that the market had exploded already, like it could if it comes back to even average CAPE ratios, because it is an awesome time to go buy companies outright and say, I don't care about price discovery. I actually want these profits for myself. That's where at some point there will be some killer opportunities.
Yeah. And this is, on that point, this is the double-edged sword of Berkshire Hathaway's success, is because Buffett has been saving up so much cash, and I hope he gets to deploy it in a way that is awesome in his mind. But this is a point where he would generally, I'd say, be starting to be like, there's so much gobble that's happening in this space, but buying a $700 million company is worthless to him. It makes no difference when you have $350 billion or whatever that number is at the moment sitting on the sidelines. He has to buy 350 companies to make it make sense. Not quite, but he's got to start seeing things like that and be like, oh, but he has to wait for the kahuna, right? He needs the kahuna. And I'm telling you, I brought up Costco and you were telling me, hey, buy no Costco. Costco just switched from Pepsi to Coke, baby.
He's not buying Costco. It's at like 50 times sales, dude. It's the most ridiculous.
Tell me any other reason. Tell me any other reason why they switched from Pepsi to Coke.
There's so many. He's buying. We talked about this before. He's buying 3M. He's buying Target.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. Then the most frustrating thing about this all is, unfortunately, if you believe Einhorn and the market is fundamentally broken, it's not broken to the point of like post-Great Depression Ben Graham, where companies are trading less than their tangible book value, right? It's not broken to that point. I personally hate this in-between land. I wish it was broken to the point where someone has $1 billion worth of corn sitting in their warehouses, and you go buy the thing for 800 million or 500 million and just sell the inventory and call it good. That has not happened, which is kind of sad.
Yep. And this is why he says a version of what we said, but I'm going to say it stronger. I'm going to give his quote and then I'll say it even stronger because he is qualifying too much, I think, in this. And I don't know if or when this will ever reverse. If it ever does, there's going to be a ton of carnage that will come from that. Doogles' take is this ish fit in the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when. That I'll say. I don't know when it's fit in the reverse, but it is fit in the reverse. And then I agree with that last part. And when it does reverse, ton of carnage. There's so much to unwind here. And people are resting. I'll tie this back to the AI conversation that we have. People are resting too much, I believe, on the fact that the companies now, and this is great, the companies now are real companies versus the .com. Like they have real profits. They have real cash flow. They are real growth companies. Unlike what we saw during the .com bubble. Fully agree. But we making it mo bubblicious. Like we're using that to make it mo and mo and mo bubblicious. And that's the danger. It's not that there was a company worth basically zero and we said it was worth billions and so it came to zero.
Yeah.
The company's worth a lot. It's just not worth what we're saying that some of these companies are worth. Some of them might be. Some of them might be, but not how we're
refresh my
propping up.
memory on the facts. I think it's 1999. Amazon's public and the stock value goes down like 90-ish%. Jeff Bezos writes a memo that says, I understand the stock price is not doing what you want, but here are all our fundamentals that are improving. And he just goes through a list of 12 things, says these are incredible. This makes me want to write a memo for my personal holdings. I might have to do this that says, yes, I didn't hold the Magnificent Seven this year. So my price return was not this. The fundamentals of my holdings increase more than the Magnificent Seven, and the market just isn't realizing that. So if I'm a long-term investor, sorry, it doesn't have to be about me. If this investor truly is holding this for the long term and wants to see free cash flow growth over time, you have to. But one of the great things about investing is that there's a clear judge of who's winning and losing, and that is price return. But in a market like this, I would argue if you did it right, you could say price is disconnected from fundamentals. My fundamentals are improving more than the S&P. And so therefore I'm winning, and the score, we're just only in the first quarter or second quarter of the game.
Yeah. And this is certainly talk your book for you, but I will also talk your book because I've said this to you before. I believe that the stocks that you buy into will have both mean reversion that occurs and multiple expansion. Both of those things are going to happen because they're so under the place where if they were just at the mean, they would be. Plus, they're going to be, the market will value them more. Fundamentals will be valued more at some point. And so there's just going to be an explosion. It's like this, like a jack in the box getting cranked up. It's just been getting cranked up for a few years now.
Yeah, way too long. Now, let me ask you a personal question, because really your quantitative investment philosophy is about what happens with price. It is about that taking advantage of that fundamental human desire to buy something that's going up. So I'd argue you're in an ideal time to make hay, because there are people out there buying meme coins simply because the price goes up until it doesn't. How do you think about that?
It's a tough one. I agree with you on the hay part, and it's the stocks, and in particular, there's one, right, Broadcom, that I've held for a while now, I think still has a little bit of gas left in the tank and is becoming more fragile. Both of those things I think are true. And so the way I think about it is I'm like, the model's there, ride it out. The purpose of it is to nix my own psychology around it. And so therefore, cool. We are where we are. But when I step back, that's kind of where I sit. I think we're entering a world where fragility is increasing, and that is inclusive of the way that my model works. And I think there's a little bit more. There's like a little bit more to get, but there's not a lot.
Yep. Oh, is that a wrap?
Yeah, I think that's a wrap. That's all I got.
All right. One admin note, the supercast.com had a few issues last couple of weeks. I work with their admin team, and that's all resolved now. So if you had any problems as a supporter of the show, a premium subscriber, downloading stuff, it's all fixed. It was spotty before. All thanks for the show or skippydoogles.com. We love listener mail. Douglas mentioned it earlier, skippydoogles@gmail.com. And all these videos, articles, everything else will be on the Substack this week. And you could do an email subscription to that too, so it hits your inbox on Monday mornings.
Thank you, everybody.
Peace.